Teachers of Reddit, what is the most traumatizing thing you've heard from a student? A few years ago we had a kid in our district commit suicide. He was at the magnet school, so a lot of the kids in my class had grown up with him, lived near him, and knew him quite well despite not going to school with him. We got the news the night it happened. We came in early the next day to have a meeting. We had to figure out a way to explain to our kids that an 11-year-old boy was so sad he decided the only option was to kill himself. Honesty is the best policy, so after calling parents and getting the okay, we talked to all our kids together during our first period. For the most part they handled it with maturity and empathy. The discussion turned to how we can help our friends and what signs to look for when someone is sad. One of my kids said, "You can't tell, you can never tell." I couldn't tell with my dad until he was gone. I found out from a counselor that my student had found his father after the man killed himself with a gunshot to the head. Preschool teacher here. My favorite overheard conversation took place in the bathroom, a very busy place, considering it's almost nap time and 2 classrooms are filtering through it. 2 teachers, 40-something children. A couple kids still wear diapers at nap, and I was helping them get them on, so I didn't hear how this conversation started. At some point, out of my eyesight around the corner I heard, "No, no, no, under your butt, what is that?" I turn and look. Little Nora is in a full squat, hands on her knees, little pigtails and chipmunk cheeks fully engrossed on Owen's genitals with his underoos around his ankles. He does not respond. She continues, "Is that a pinky? 'Cause I have them on my hands and on my feet." "You got one on your butt. You got a butt pinky. A goddamn butt pinky. Look at a 3-year-old's penis and tell me that isn't the most apt fucking thing you've ever heard." Worked in an impoverished town and we were discussing the Scarlet Letter. One girl just blurted out that she wished the main character had had an abortion because her own mother hated her and told her she was a mistake every single day. While student teaching I had one of my dramatic juniors drop a bomb on me. Impregnant. I asked her if this is good news or bad news. She told me it's good news as the dad is 21, going to help raise the kid, and that he loves her. Taking her words as such I asked her what he does for a job. Her reply, "He deals drugs, but only Xanax." She ended our conversation by asking that I wouldn't tell her parents as she hadn't told them yet. Yep, sounded like some good news to me. I got a call from a student telling me that B was missing, and they were going to start searching on the outskirts of town. She'd gone running and hadn't come home. We all met in her neighborhood and divided into search teams. A couple hours later, we got the call to meet a central location. The same kid who had called walked over to me and told me they had found her body. It was one of my saddest experiences as a teacher. I had to call each kid in our class of 18 and tell them the news. If it wasn't for you, I'd be dead now. S was suicidal the day before, had a plan and everything. I was in the hall at the end of the day and stopped to chat with her. We talked for about 10 minutes about her day and then she walked away. Nothing out of the ordinary. It turns out that conversation was enough to give her reason to live one more day. We talked every day about basically nothing to keep her going until we could get her help. I'll never forget her face or the look she gave me when she said that. I cried like a baby too. I was walking a kid, 9Y/0, out to student pickup, and out of the blue he says, "I like my new daddy better than my old daddy." "Oh," I said. "Why is that?" "Because my old daddy tried to kill my mom. And also me. But it's okay. He's in jail now, and my new daddy is much nicer." Title: I schools, man. I teach ESL. I had a cute, petite Japanese woman as a student once. She told us about her first trip outside of Japan, to Malaysia or Philippines or some Southeast Asian country I forget now. She was walking down the street and some people in a van tried to talk to her, but she ignored them because she didn't know them. She told me she was very polite to them, but they kept trying to get her into the van and told her they would be her friend. Then they tried to grab her, but at that moment her friends arrived and the van drove off. She was very confused as to why the people in the van wanted her to get into it and wanted to be her friend. I just stared at her and was thinking, girl, you almost got kidnapped into sex slavery. She didn't seem to realize. I caught 2 year 8 students both still 12 years old, passing a note. One girl was giving advice to her friend about the blowjob she was apparently giving her boyfriend that weekend. The level of detail this girl gave was impressive yet terrifying for a child to know. I didn't know what a blowjob was at that age, let alone know the benefits of a finger or two up the ass. Needless to say, that was passed up to the child protection team. Sadly, no one was surprised when the expert gave birth aged 15. Same age her mother was when she was born. Two preschoolers in my class were arguing over a marker. Girl who got the marker snatched out of her hand by a little boy says, "I wasn't done with that yet. Give it back, and you can have it when I'm done." I was so incredibly proud of my student trying to problem solve that the boy's response, "You is a problem to God," was completely unexpected. Professor here. Girl gave a speech in class about how at 18 a Marine bought her 13 shots of tequila. She'd never had a drink in her life. She told her rape story. It was powerful and heartbreaking. She was a virgin, and she said no one besides the police and her mom knew the story, and she thanked us for listening, said she wanted to tell someone, and felt comfortable in my speech class. Ended by giving all the girls in my class advice on being careful at parties. About once a semester a dumbass freshman will announce in class, "Yeah, I pay your salary." That never goes well. Taught in the Basque Country in northern Spain. They're still getting used to the concept of black people there. The biggest football club in Bilbao where I worked is Athletic Bilbao. They have a black guy playing for them. Born and raised in Bilbao. I had an 8-year-old kid say Inaki Williams is a good player, but I don't like him, because he's a black. Oh Mattia, you racist fuck. Every day there was something new. First day as elementary guidance counselor, walking a second grader to my office to talk to her B/C teacher says she won't pay attention. As we're walking I ask, "If you could have 3 wishes, what would they be?" She said, "I wish my daddy didn't go away. I wish that lady didn't get shot dead next door last night. And I wish I could get a job, so my mama's car wouldn't get possessed." Sick. I knew I really couldn't counsel her into paying attention anytime soon. So I just took her to my office and let her draw me pictures for a while, and talk about whatever she felt like sharing. Not really a teacher, but I did have a free period one year, and happened to be a teacher's aide. Overheard some small snippets of conversation regarding guns and bombs and stuff. Totally blew it off, assuming the kids were just talking about some video games or something. Now, these were kind of off the wall type kids. Trenchcoat Mayfair members through and through, so I decided to listen in on their next conversation a little bit closer. I hear some more stuff along the lines of, "Yeah, if you get them all in the lunchroom you can take them all out really easily." I corner one of them after class and confront him, and this kid freaks the fuck out. He starts talking like an auctioneer, getting words off as fast as possible. Apparently, they weren't talking about murdering an entire school, just zombie apocalypse survival techniques. It's good I didn't get some real staff involved, or this would have to have been posted in Tifu. It seems I had been given a nickname, Charlo, so I would hear that word every now and then during class, but I never thought they would be referring to me until I noticed I was hearing that word with every single group of students I was teaching. Eventually I heard a student saying Charlo sucks. I put him on spot until he confessed he was referring to me. I didn't hear this, but it's more of what the student did. I'm a special education teacher. We have students use the reflection room for escalated behaviors. It's basically a mat padded room for when students become aggressive. One student went in there and tried to hang himself on the door handle using his shoelace. Teacher stopped him for obvious reasons, but he was so fast at tying the shoestring around his neck and onto the door handle. Poor kid was a 4th grader. He's fine, but I mean, how does a 4th grader even think of doing that? So sad. I used to teach in a super fucked up inner city school. In my first year of teaching, I overheard one of my 2nd graders say, "Don't drop the soap." I interjected and said, "You shouldn't say that. You don't know what that means." Usually, I wouldn't tell a kid what he or she does or doesn't know. I sure did hope the 7-year-old did not know what that meant though. Next thing I know, my 2nd grader is cracking up and cheerfully saying, "Duh, Miss S, that means you'll get but raped if you're in jail." He was not trying to be defiant at all. He seemed surprised it was inappropriate and perhaps may have wondered if I knew what it meant. Definitely realized how fucked that community was at that point. No childhoods at all for those kids. He was a sweet boy. I hope he is doing well. I'm drunk and feel like sharing this story. When I was a senior in high school I was committed to slacking off, because who gives a shit about high school, right? I took a class called Teen Leadership, which involved about 25 of us, grades 9 to 12, just talking about random self-esteem boosting types of stuff, while sitting on couches. Anyway, we do this assignment halfway through the semester, where we write a one-page, double-spaced, summary of ourselves. This Korean exchange student girl stands up as the last to present, and gives a speech, in broken English, that essentially distills down to all my life my father has told me, that I shouldn't bother going to school, because I'm useless and too stupid to learn. Turns out she financed her own trip to the States, to go out on her own, and educate herself away from her atrocious father. She actually taught herself all the English she knew. She started crying so hard that she couldn't finish her speech. Being the edgy piece of shit teenager I was at the time, I acted indifferent, but to this day her predicament brings me to tears, because at the time I'd never been so close to such a devastating tragedy like that. My first year teaching, I had a high schooler sharing some personal writing, very freedom writers. Kids were encouraged to write from the heart, etc. We'd all sit in a circle and share. This girl goes into this story about how her boyfriend got her blackout drunk, then videotaped him and his friends taking advantage of her. As she reads this out loud to the class, I'm only thinking about my responsibilities as a mandatory reporter. My job's on the line if I don't take stuff like this to a counselor immediately. Then she goes on to explain how the boyfriend woke her up and made her watch the video of her getting raped. She calls up an ex, who comes over and shoots the guy in the dick. After she shares this masterpiece, I search for clues that this is all in the past, something she's told others before, and all these psychos have been locked up. She just goes nope and makes it seem like this is the first time she's told anyone. I take her writing to a counselor. The next week, I get called into a meeting for her. I'm expecting this long report about sexual abuse, mental stability, and stuff, but her dad just wanted to make sure her grades were okay. I had a student write me a letter. She clearly had a crush on me, but I really brushed it off as nothing as much of a childhood crush. Her letters began to get more and more intimate. One of them entailed using scientific equations, and how like science we should have chemistry and create new element. I put that letter forever away, so I wouldn't have to go to jail. I was a brand new high school teacher in a ghetto part of town. It was my first year teaching math, and I thought I could really make a difference. I was naive and thought that with enough patience and understanding, I could break through some of the kids and help them pass high school and maybe even to college. Well, I had a particularly troubled student. His name was Daniel. He was bullied because he was poor and gay. It broke my heart seeing him try to express himself artistically with his art and his clothes, because some shithead bully would always tear his pages and rip them up. Nothing infuriated me more than seeing no one doing anything, and that no one cared besides myself. Even the principal didn't give a shit. There was one day where he told me something I would never forget. It's okay if they pick on me or call me names. I know one day I'll be successful and that I'm beautiful. You remind me a lot of my dad. He always took time to ask about my day and beat the shit out of me with a pair of jumper cables. Well, I'll see you next year. You've really helped me when no one would. Sadly, he didn't return the following school year, but I'll always remember you, Daniel. I teach at a Title I school district, urban core, poor neighborhood. I hear stuff all the time that I probably should regard as shocking, but honestly I guess I've grown accustomed to it. A couple of examples that come to mind. Juniors, 16 to 17, that are pregnant with their second kid. Homelessness. I guess I come across as someone easy to open up to because they launch into full-out stories about where they have been staying, friends, family, cars, bus stops, just roaming until morning when they can come to school, how they have been getting by. Thank God for Title I schools receiving free breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Students getting shot. One of my students is going to be released from the hospital in a few days. Another of my students is his sister. He was in ICU for several days following a shooting. Endless cursing at anyone and everyone. For anything. Example, me, good morning. Student, fuck you but you don't know me, get out of my fucking face. While this is not something I've heard but rather seen, girl fights. Horribly violent and bloody girl fights. They will rip chunks of hair out of people's scalps with skin still attached. They will gouge people's faces with their nails. And they do not care if you are the person they are fighting, or a teacher/cop trying to break them up. They will keep fighting that way.